Medieval knights. When we think of medieval knights, we usually imagine something very cool. Brave warriors protecting their honor. Knights fighting in jousting tournaments. Maybe even heroes hunting dragons. Of course, there was no such thing as dragons. But the truth is, being a knight in the Middle Ages wasn't as romantic as we might think. For example, jousting wasn't always part of knightly culture. And the code of chivalry, instead of teaching knights how to behave like polite gentlemen as we see in movies, was actually more like a list of things knights were not allowed to do. And dragons, as much as we might wish they were real, sadly, they never existed. It could have been a pretty cool Middle Ages if they did. Today we're going to talk about what the life of a knight in the Middle Ages was actually like. In medieval Europe, religion was at the center of life. At that time, almost everyone was Catholic, or at least they said they were. From kings to peasants, everyone was expected to fulfill their religious duties. Knights were included in this as well. Most knights started their day by attending morning mass at church. Today, many of us believe breakfast is the most important meal of the day. But back then, feeding the soul was considered more important than feeding the stomach. Knights also had to follow something called the code of chivalry. Today, when we hear the word chivalry, we think about polite behavior like in romantic movies. But back then, the purpose of these rules was a little different. In reality, these rules were created to keep some aggressive and rough knights under control. Some of the rules included: protect the weak, live with honor, respect women. But the list of things they were not allowed to do was even longer. For example, knights were strictly forbidden to beat priests, steal other people's livestock, burn houses, rob, or kidnap people. So in reality, many of these rules were things we would simply consider basic human decency today. Now let's talk about food. Today people try all kinds of diets: keto, paleo, Atkins. But in the Middle Ages, none of those existed. In fact, people ate meat almost every day. The reason is a bit surprising. Many people believed vegetables could actually be poisonous. There was even a saying back then: beware of green salads and raw fruits, for they will make your master sick. Lower classes usually ate pork. But since knights had higher social status, they had access to better foods, such as beef, mutton, cheese. They were quite wealthy when it came to food. Their stomachs were almost always celebrating. Food was often preserved by salting or pickling. This made people very thirsty. But clean drinking water wasn't always easy to find. Because of that, people in the Middle Ages often drank alcohol instead. That's one of the reasons alcohol consumption has been common from that time all the way to today. Back then, water was almost like a precious resource. Yes, knights really did drink quite a lot, and sometimes that led to fights and behavior that wasn't very knightly. Appearance was also very important for knights. At that time, there were laws that controlled what people were allowed to wear. These laws prevented peasants from wearing expensive or flashy clothes. That way, everyone could easily recognize each other's social status. Knights, on the other hand, wore more luxurious and elaborate clothing to show their rank. So what exactly was a knight's job? In many ways, knights were basically soldiers serving their lord. In some places, like England, knights directly protected the king. In places like France, local nobles could recruit knights to serve as their personal protectors. But there's one fact about knights that surprises many people. A knight usually fought in battle only about 40 days a year. The rest of the time, they simply stayed ready for war. Being prepared for battle at any moment was very important. To stay strong and prepared, knights often participated in tournaments. At first, these tournaments were mock battles. Over time, they evolved into jousting competitions. These tournaments were only open to nobles, and participating in them was considered a great honor. Knights could also win money and prizes in these tournaments. Knights' armor looked incredibly impressive. A full suit of armor weighed around 30 to 50 kilograms. It provided strong protection against arrows, but at the same time it made knights much slower. Because of this, some historians believe certain battles may have been lost because of heavy armor. In the Middle Ages, the average life expectancy was about 30 years. Because of this, training to become a knight started very early. Usually it began at the age of 7. During the following years, young trainees learned horse riding, archery, sword fighting. When they turned 21, they could officially become knights. At that point, a ceremony was held, and they would swear loyalty to a lord. In the evenings, there was entertainment. After dinner, knights often listened to minstrels. These performers would tell heroic stories, poems, epic legends. Knights also had a slightly unusual sleep routine. Not everyone slept at the same time. While some slept, others would stay awake and stand guard. So in short, the life of a knight wasn't only about battles, but it also wasn't completely full of entertainment either. Still, for someone who dedicated their life to it from an early age, it was a very important role. So becoming a knight in the Middle Ages wasn't as simple or glamorous as it looks on screen. After all, you were a soldier with responsibilities to protect others. Even if the title brought power and a somewhat luxurious life, one day it would all come to an end.